Welcome to Police Profiles. I'm Officer Bob Frudenberg of the Suffolk County Police Department's Public Information Bureau. Today we're going to talk about the Motor Carrier Safety Section with Lieutenant Dan Mulhern and Officer Fred Garmison of the Motor Carrier Safety Section. That's a mouthful. Welcome to Police Profiles.
Thank you.
The Motor Carrier Safety Section, that has to do with trucks and school buses and all sorts of things like that. And what do you do? Why do you do it, and when did it get started, and how does it help the people of Suffolk County?
Largely it has to do with truck enforcement, and the way we got started was back in spring of 1984. We were solicited for input as to whether anyone would be interested in enforcing hazardous material transportation regulations within the Highway Patrol Bureau. And
that's a specialty of itself, really.
It's a very big specialty, and when you first look at the regulations, you think to yourself, wow, this is too much for any one person to really swallow. A lot of the
what is hazardous material? Just give me a couple of examples, Lieutenant.
Hazardous material can be anything from explosives, gasoline, flammable liquids, poisons.
Radioactive?
Radioactive is a hazardous material, down to an irritant like a pesticide. Mm-hmm. And all of these materials are regulated at different levels of enforcement depending on the danger that the particular material presents. And the regulations themselves go to packaging, proper transportation, communicating the hazards to emergency people like police officers,
by labeling trucks.
By labeling packages, by placarding trucks, we have to use the correct terminology here, and okay. By marking trucks, and by requiring that the proper truck be used for the proper load.
But it increased from hazardous material to what it is today, which is much more than that.
Initially the thought was we were going to enforce hazardous material transportation regulations. As we got into the training and saw the state of the law and what needed doing, we found that it made more sense to combine all the truck enforcement activities that would be expected of the department into one unit. So we ended up with hazardous material transportation regulations. We ended up with vehicle safety regulations, which have to do with driver qualifications, vehicle equipment, safety equipment, brakes, steering, things like that.
When you say vehicle, you're talking primarily school buses,
commercial
trucks?
Vehicles.
Commercial
vehicles largely, school buses also.
Okay.
And also into that we blended the county's weight enforcement efforts.
Okay, weight, meaning the weight of these vehicles is regulated by what, Fred?
Vehicle and traffic law.
Vehicle and traffic law. Yeah. But I have to say that most cops, and don't, correct me if I'm wrong, most cops don't know the kinds of laws that you enforce. Isn't that correct, Fred?
Yeah, that is correct, because we run into it quite frequently. We stop some guy who knows a precinct cop, and he said, well, my buddy in the precinct says I don't have to do that. This is particularly a problem with the seatbelts. And they say, well, I'm driving a truck and I don't have to wear a seatbelt.
Some truckers do not have to wear seatbelts.
Some don't and some do.
And the precinct cop, the guy who enforces most of the vehicle and traffic law, really isn't a specialist in this particular kind of law.
Yeah, they shouldn't really listen to precinct police officers when it comes to anything involving a commercial vehicle.
And we don't want to sound like we're picking on the cop.
No, we're certainly not, but it's a complicated area, and what's going on in New York State is that more and more the responsibility to regulate commercial vehicle traffic is moving away from the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Vehicle and Traffic Law, except in the case of moving violations, obviously, speeding and things like that, and to the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation in New York State is the lead agency for enforcing or regulating if you would, the safety of commercial vehicles.
And you work very closely with the department. We call it DOT, Department of Transportation.
We have a very close relationship with them. We work with them on a regular basis on what we call commercial vehicle checkpoints, at least 2 days a week. One of the reasons is that a lot of the funding which finds its way down to us through things like the weight enforcement assistance program, and a lot of the training that our officers were able to get was made possible by federal funds, which in turn came from the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program, which we call MCSAP. And these federal funds are all channeled through the DOT.
So it saves the people of Suffolk County.
Yeah, there's a considerable amount of money available for truck safety through the federal government. What the federal government said when they set this program up is there will be one agency in each state who will disperse this money, decide what's going to be done with it, and who will keep stats on what's going on, what's being done with the money, what kind of results you're getting with it. And in this state, that's the Department of Transportation. Ergo, we have this very close working relationship with them.
Okay. Fred, they call you Mr. Dirt?
That's correct.
How did you get that name, Fred?
Because you get dirty when you inspect the truck. And there's no way to go underneath the truck and inspect it properly and not get dirty. Yeah. And I would get dirty. Before the county issued us coveralls, I would walk into the office and I would be covered with grease and dirt because the trucks are dirty.
And cops love to give other cops nicknames, don't they?
Of course.
So you became Mr. Dirt. But this is really a serious business.
Certainly.
I mean, I drive the expressway. Most of our audience drives next to trucks, behind trucks, in front of trucks. What kind of qualifications do you have? And then maybe you can tell us a little bit of what you find when you start to inspect these trucks.
Okay. Every officer in the Motor Carrier Safety Section has been through a federal Motor Carrier Safety Inspection course, which is the actual inspection of the vehicle. We've also been through the Transportation Hazardous Material courses, and our officers go through a brake and steering seminar at least once a year.
Okay. So you have so many credentials. You were telling me before the program started, you have so many credentials. At one time a judge told you, okay, officer, we know you're an expert. Because we have to list those things when we go to court to testify. We have to list our credentials. That's true, isn't it, Fred?
That is correct.
I can say that. You have to be modest.
I have additional qualifications above the other fellows in the unit, because I've also been trained by the federal government to teach the transportation handling and the federal regulations, in addition to accident investigation courses involving commercial vehicles.
I want to get back to that. Basically, or maybe you could just tell me what your primary responsibilities are as a section. What kinds of things do you do?
The best way to address that would be to look at the rules and procedures. What it says is our responsibility within the Highway Patrol Bureau. We're responsible for on-the-street enforcement of all laws and regulations that apply to commercial motor vehicle traffic, particularly with regard to hazardous material transporters, hazardous waste transporters. We're also responsible for weight enforcement and for the maintenance and upkeep of the equipment that we use to do this weight enforcement.
Okay. You get into school bus inspections?
We do school bus inspections. In many cases, we do them in conjunction with the motorcycle unit of the Highway Patrol Bureau. We have also done them in conjunction with the New York State DOT inspectors. There are a number of laws that we enforce. New York State did what I would consider to be a very sensible thing. In fact, I think a lot of states have done it. Rather than take a body of law and write it and say, these are our hazardous material transportation regulations, these are our motor carrier safety regulations, they passed a very brief law that says, New York State hereby recognizes the federal regulations governing hazardous material transportation, governing commercial vehicle safety appliances.
Because there's so much interstate travel with these vehicles, isn't it?
It's easier for the trucker, because he knows when he goes from New York to New Jersey to Virginia to California, the regulations are the same. As far as the training that we have to do inspections, we do what's called a National Uniform Commercial Vehicle Inspection. The inspection that we do by the roadside at exit 66 on the expressway, say, if one of our offices does it, or if one of the DOT inspectors on the site does it, or if a California state DOT inspector happened to be there and he did it, it would be the same inspection. The truckers know what to expect.
So it keeps it uniform. You've won a couple of awards from the National Council of Counties, and maybe we could show those awards to the audience.
Well, the first award is from the National Association of Counties, and what they do is they recognize achievement in county governments, innovative programs within county government. And this award recognized our motor carrier safety section as one of the pioneers, really, in this movement, particularly in regard to taking all the aspects of commercial vehicle safety and putting them all together, cross-training all the people, and having them capable of doing any job within that spectrum.
The other one is from the Department of Transportation, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
For an outstanding job.
That's correct. That was given to us at a motor carrier safety conference upstate. I think it was in Glens Falls the year that they gave us that award. And that was in recognition of our achievement and service to the state as far as the commercial vehicle inspection.
I know we can make out faces when we have the award in front of us, but the lieutenant standing there in the white shirt is now the commanding officer
Yes,
of
that's
the Highway Patrol
Deputy
Bureau.
Inspector Al Berry, who was then the lieutenant in my position.
Okay, and you were in the forefront of this, as were you, Fred. Both of you are pioneers, in a sense.
I had the honor of, and I consider it an honor, I consider it the high point of my career. As a sergeant, I was the first sergeant in this unit, and to the credit of my superiors, who was then Lieutenant Berry and Deputy Inspector Dormer, who was then commanding officer of Highway Patrol, who's now Chief Dormer, they pretty much gave me an open field and said, find out what's needed and go out and do it.
I got to move along quickly. Fred, what are you looking for? What kind of violations do you find? And what does that do to the trucker? What does it do to the business?
All right, primarily we look for everything in the commercial vehicle inspection procedure laid out by the federal government. Primarily, we're looking for safety violations, brakes, steering, coupling, lighting devices, make sure they have, and that the driver is qualified.
What's the most common?
Most common is steering violations and brake violations.
And you put them right out of service.
And those put right out of service.
People like me and you, when we're off duty, even when we're on duty, we're riding next to these things. What do you recommend to the audience?
I recommend that anybody that if there's a truck behind them, get out of the way, because a truck weighs about 10 times more than the average car empty, and you have no idea what condition their brakes are. Their steering is in. Just change lanes, get out of the way. If you're next to them, don't stay next to them too long. Just get out of the way as much as you can.
It would be worth pointing out along those lines that an automobile is much more maneuverable, can slow down, speed up faster than a truck could. And a little common courtesy would make the truck driver's job easier and quite possibly prevent you from getting in an uncomfortable situation. I'd like to go back for a second to something that you said when you were asking Fred about what do the truckers find as a result.
Brief, Lieutenant.
Okay, I will.
We're running out of time.
Okay, we've had at least one big group of truckers tell us that since they started implementing a strong preventive maintenance program to comply with our inspections, our regulations, that their downtime has gone down and they're actually saving money.
Terrific, and that's good for everybody.
It certainly is.
I want to thank Lieutenant Dan Mulhern, and Officer, Mr. Dirt, Fred Garmison, for being part of this, Tim Burt, the director of this program, and of course, Cablevision Suffolk County TV6 for making this program possible. Thank you all.